For this fourth video, we're going to talk about the light side in relation to the dark side, and we're going to just talk about what to do there. Right now, up till now, I've told you to draw the shadow shapes, to darken in here, get an approximation of the values surrounding the figure, to keep this kind of middle grayish flat tone on the shadow side, and to leave everything else as just white. So let's switch to the ball here for a moment. We went through that in the last video. And what I said to you is that once we did this, the next step would be that we would start to put in gradations of tone that would take us from less light to more light in the light side. Now, any little bit of smudge on the paper drops that value down quite a lot. I'm not sure that it shows up so well in the video, probably because I'm not that good at lighting these things. I don't have that equipment. But any little smudge on the paper, you look at a white paper sideways and it's not white anymore. And that white means that it's down one value. The lightest place is probably going to be, see if we can just show this on here. I think we can see that, but you know what? Let me darken the ball to make it very obvious. So now that's not really a white ball at all. So there's a place where there's a reflected light. And that's the whitest thing you can get there. If that's the whitest thing, then the white ball, in order to see that, the white ball can't be white. The white ball has to be one step, a half a step down from pure white, or you can't make that distinction. So at some point, to get the actual color of something, if it's a white ball, we're going to have to make it value 9, value 8, something. We have to go down. If it's a yellow ball, it would be value 8, because that's about what yellow is, about 2 steps down from white. Orange is about 5 steps down from white, 4 steps down. So it's kind of orange. If you take away all the orange part of it, you just get a gray that's kind of like that. And then red is darker than that. We need to decide, what it's called the local value. What's the local value in the light that reflects the color of the object? Now, we can draw this person and just leave all this white because we like the way it looks. In order to make it look a little bit more natural, then maybe I would have to open these shadows up a little bit more so that it didn't look too dark, because we have to ask ourselves, what value is this? What value is this? How far away are they? So if I make this white and it's three steps away, then I need to make this more like a value 7 than a value 5. I don't want to talk too much about that stuff because it gets a little too complicated. But at some point, we need to focus on the fact that we need to have a relationship between what's lit and what's not, and they have to feel like they go together. If it's too dark, it's going to look kind of weird. Now, if we look at, so we create gradations. That's really what I want to talk about. We have a lit place. It gets less lit. It gets even less and even less. In a boxy kind of situation, the difference between these tones is clear. In an organic situation, it's much more gradated, and it's much harder to see where one ends and the other one starts. And that's kind of what we have with the face. So let's look at the light side and let's see what we can do. I'm a light-skinned guy. That puts my skin tone somewhere around value 7. Might be value 6, could be a little higher than 7. White people aren't white and black people aren't black. So if I were to want to capture my skin tone, then I'm going to need to make these white areas darker than they are by a little bit. I could either put in a base tone and use my eraser to pull out anything that I think is lighter than that, or I can work from the Terminator. I can work from the Terminator up and into that, and then reserving the light areas. They really come down to the same thing. So I'm going to just darken that and use my eraser to pull out tones and also kind of reserve some places. I know there's a lot of light here, so I'm just not going to color anything there. I know back here, this is far away from the light, but it isn't in the shadow. So that means it's a dark light. As I get that grayer, in order to keep the contrast, I'm going to need to start to go into these shadows and lower their value. Because that's what it's really about. All of the relationships, how many tones away, how much darker is one thing than something else. It's all relative, which is what makes value a difficult thing to do. I can draw myself as a white plaster guy, but then I have to make my shadows kind of follow that. And if I go for a little bit more of a natural look, like a black and white photo, then I'm going to have to adjust as well. There's a whole other thing that has to do with transparency, and that is too complicated for a short video set like this. So now I want to start to just develop more information, ask myself, how dark is that? How does it change? What happens in here? And then try to create something like that in those shadow areas. So I squint a lot, and if I squint a lot, I can see how dark something is. It gets rid of a lot of details, and then I can also squint at my drawing. Sorry about that coughing. I can also squint at my drawing and ask myself whether I'm seeing largely the same thing in the drawing or seeing what I want in terms of contrasts. So this is a dark light like that, so it can't stay white anymore. So this is very thin stuff. I'm using a skinny little point, and I'm putting no pressure on it. I'm probably going to end up lightening it. This is a sharper edge. Sharper edge against that. I want to keep stepping back and looking at what I'm done. Now, this nasolabial furrow does this. Little shadow shape under here, gradating into here, then it maybe comes up a little darker. So I want to avoid having lines and sharp edges. I want to keep everything soft because that's really what's going on in this photo. I can do a line drawing, but that's something different. Remember, I want to have little dark accents because that sets other things off. And I think there's a lot of stuff I can still adjust on this. I'm not convinced about this eye completely. And I kind of like to take it out and put it back in and fix it. Slightly sharper there, softer there. There's hardly any white on this. And then when I get to the end of each shadow shape, I want to gradate that so that you can't tell where that ends, and it just becomes the light. Direction of stroke could be something to think about as well. Again, a little bit more than I want to tackle in a short set of videos like this. So I want to move into the darkest stuff. And where's the darkest stuff going to be? It's going to be inside the darkest shapes. This photo is too dark and there's too much contrast. So it's a little hard to work from. Right now I'm trying to get a feeling that all these tones belong together, and I'm trying to get this gray to feel light enough, which means I need to adjust my darks. And keep stepping back. If I had the leisure to do it, but I don't with a video, I would just spend time inspecting and looking, see where I'm right, see where I'm wrong, see what needs to be sharper. And I would just keep looking at the aggregate and asking myself, what do I have here? Can't really do that in a demo. Now it's going to get pretty dark under here because that's pretty far in and away from the light. Again, I'm going to sneak up on that and try to push that like that. It's darker up here. I want a fuzzier edge here. So I'm kind of going over that. I want to push this back in the dark. So I'm going to push that down and keep that darkness away from the actual edge of that. I'm going to kind of sneak up on that edge so I don't get something that's too sharp. Go around little circular shapes. And the whole time I'm doing this, if I was left to my own devices, I would be drawing and redrawing and just trying to make this better. This plane is turned down. That's what we're really doing here, is thinking about which planes are turned up, which are turned straight up and down, which planes are turned down. Plane is turned down is going to get less light than a plane that's turned up. Plane that's turned away from the light, which all of this is going to get less light. So that's going to fade off into that, and that's going to gradually make all of this more and more believable. So a nose is always turned down away from the light, or almost always. This is turning away from the light along that far edge. This is turned away. This is turning away and fading as it goes back. This is fading into here. This brow needs to be a little bit bigger. It's getting closer. I want to keep building that tone, and I want to keep trying to get the gray that's there, that's working as my face tone, to read as being light, even though it's not white anymore. Because then I may want to start using my eraser to pull out tones. So I know that this is turned to the light, and this is turned to the light. And that is, I can use a kneaded eraser, or I can use this thing. I think in the last video I'm going to talk about a more aggressive process of drawing with the eraser. Sooner or later, as you're working in a tonal way, you're going to start working with the eraser as much as you're working with things that make dark marks. I got a lot of light up here and there, so I'm just making these marks every place that is turned to the light. Now I may also want to get the shadow areas a little lighter, because there's light areas in the shadow and dark areas. This is all reflected light. So to do that, I use my kneaded eraser and make a little point. And the same as the other eraser, but it's not so much a rubbing thing as a kind of lifting, like that. A little light there, a little light there, a little light just above the lip, the edge of that nose, the edge of the nostril. This is kind of the process. At this point, you're searching for the magic of light, and it's tiny little marks, tiny little moves, tiny little things. And then eventually you make other things a little bit darker. I think that's a little too dark because I've raised the light environment there. So now I have to just soften that or it's going to look really wrong. And then you soften it too much maybe and you put it back in. I think that looks pretty good. So then you start to look maybe for really dark accents. The dark accents make everything else pop, just like the white accents make everything pop, because they complete the scale. Now here's an interesting point. When I'm looking at this eye here in that photo, not a big photograph, and it's really murky. And I have to decide if I want to try to draw an eye from what I know, or do I just want to go with a kind of generally murky quality that I'm seeing in there and just leave it at that. Expand that shadow and gradate it a little bit more. A lot of small moves when you get to this point, and a lot of repetition and a lot of telling yourself, oh, I got to do that part again. You want to stay away from edges that are too sharp. So gradate everything away, create a dark area or a dark shape, and then inside that dark shape, it can get darker. That's what kind of functions as a line. I think I'm going to stop there with that. I got some stray stuff there that needs to vanish like that. And I could certainly work on this more by making tiny little marks and tiny little moves. Going to imitate the shape by making marks that feel like as if I'm touching that cheek. I get a little bit more roundness out of it. And as I said, you just keep going back in, you keep lifting it out, you keep putting it back in. And if I stay here to do all that, we'll have a 7-hour video. So with that, I'm going to call it a wrap. say I'm happy enough. And I hope that made clear to you a lot of the steps in drawing a head. Next video, I'm going to introduce some other stuff and a little bit of a summary, and that'll be it. Hope you enjoyed this one too.